It's 10 minutes past 10 and welcome to this community board meeting. Because we are doing this via Zoom, I will just introduce everybody for the record. So we have here all the members of the community board. So Barry Bruce, who is the chair, and the other members, Jude Batson, Calum MacLeod, Ed Taylor, Quentin Smith, Neve Shaw, Chris Hatfield. We have staff present. Stuart Burns is the General Manager in attendance. He's been allocated to this meeting, and Thurnis Clerta is joining because he is the General Manager for covering for item 1. We also have Aaron Burt and Jeannie Galavasi speaking to that report. Aaron is also the author of item 2, so he will speak to that report. Carrie and Tricia are the authors of item 3, which is about parking, and they will speak to that report. And as it just so happens, Stu is their GM. And Andrew Edgar is the author of the 4th report. He did join previously. I can't see him right now. However, item 5 is a table and chairs report, and Blake Hozier from APL Property will present that. We also have from the Parks and Reserves team, Diana Manson and Brianna Pringle. And also joining us is the Upper Clutha Liaison Manager, Robin Steele. So I'll now pass over to Barry.
Thank you, Jane. Welcome to this morning's meeting. Apologies for slight delay getting connected. Initially, I guess we start with apologies. Do we have any apologies this morning? No. So any leaves of leave of absence applications? Does anyone wish to have some leave? Well, I'm going to put my hand up here and ask for leave from the 17th to the 24th of May. If somebody will move.
Happy to move.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thanks, Neve. All those in favour?
Aye.
Do you have to go through that count, Jane?
Just signalling that for the procedural resolutions, we will just take either a verbal or a visual indication, but for the more substantive matters, that is the items on the agenda, I will manage them as per a division. Thanks,
Jane. Any declarations of conflict of interest this morning? Nothing. So we move on now to the public forum, and I hand over to you here, Jane, and if we can.
Right, thank you. We have received one comment for the public forum. It is from Jo Fife of John Edmonds and Associates. She is a representative of Lakeland Adventures Wanaka Limited, and she writes as follows. Lakeland Adventures Limited is a family-run business wanting to continue their operations in the face of economic turmoil, especially in the tourism sector. It has been understood by the Council and LAL, which is Lakeland Adventures Limited, that they had the correct consents and licenses for the last 30 years. Only recently was it found there was an error in Council's processing, which has caused LAL to have to reapply for resource consent. The recent decision for the log cabin to be removed from the lakefront has also created additional uncertainty to the business, and therefore a new beach licence had to be applied for. Some comments for consideration by the Wanaka Community Board. The operations of the jet ski tours are outside Wanaka Community Board jurisdiction for comment, as this occurs on LIN's administered area, Lake Wanaka, not QLDC administered /owned area. The licence application is solely for the use of the land in front of the lake relating to the hire and storage of equipment and ticket sales for the commercial recreation business. Assessment of the motorised activity and its appropriateness should be left to the regulatory team, who assess the effects of an activity on the surface of the lake and surrounds. This is the correct avenue for considering appropriateness for operating a commercial activity in a public area, rather than consideration by the Wanaka Community Board as landowners of the land to the front of the lake. Paragraph 13 of the agenda item report states the motorised vessel activities, quote, predominantly occur within Roy's Bay, unquote. This is incorrect. 90% of motorised vessels use Roy's Bay as access in and out in a controlled manner, then operate in the open lake, including jet skis. The proposed activity has been reduced to as little as possible to be commercially viable for LAL. They cannot survive without the jet ski tours or other motorised activities outlined in the application. For the entire time LAL have been operating, there has been only one complaint which related to jet skis. All operations, including jet skis, are safe and comply with required noise standards. With the current tourism market, there is going to be a need to be lenient on businesses such as this to ensure they are able to continue operating into the future as they have done safely for the last 30 years. Joe Fife, planner, John Edmonds and Associates. So that is the end of her public forum presentation.
Thank you, Jane. Appreciate that. I would normally ask if anyone had any questions, but I guess we will deal with that shortly when we move on to item 1 on the agenda. Firstly, I'd like somebody to move confirmation of the agenda. Thanks, Ed. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Chris. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion carried. Okay. Confirmation of minutes from our previous meeting. I'll take that as read. Everyone's happy with those? If not, do we have any comments? Otherwise, would somebody move to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting, please?
I'll move.
We'll move. Thanks, Neve.
I was only there for half of it, so I can't.
Okay, so is somebody happy to second?
Happy to second.
Thanks, Calum. This is procedural, I guess. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thanks. We move on to item 1, new licence for Lakeland Adventures. I guess, can we start with you, Thunis, perhaps, to run us past that application?
Mr. Chair, we've got nothing else to add to this report at this stage. So I will suggest that we hear from the councillors or from the community board.
Thanks, Thunis. So any board members got something they'd like to add?
Can I just ask, I know that there have been some discussions circulated prior. Is that forming part of the recommendation before us yet, or are we waiting on something additionally?
Can you answer that, Thunis?
So Barry, I know that there are some suggestions that came from the community board members. And do you want to make that known now?
Yes, there has been some amendments to the report. Perhaps would Jane be able to read those amendments out that were circulated?
Yes, certainly. since the release of the report, there has been some feedback, and based upon this, it is suggested that the recommendation have some small adjustments. So they are as follows. So just reading down, within part 2, renewal is now 5 of a further 1 year by agreement of both parties. Use has had the addition of some words for clarification. So it reads, non-motorised equipment hire and the sale of guided commercial water-based activities upon Lake Wanaka by Lakeland Adventures. So that is just added for clarity. Further down into the other section, so there is, it's about the 6th point down. Retail activities shall be limited to equipment hire and the sale of Lakeland Adventure tickets. So that has deleted some items there. The next point is, and it is new, the main trailer will be a maximum of 9 metres long and will not accommodate that is for the board to decide, will not accommodate a booking office facility. The final design of the trailer must first be confirmed as appropriate by the General Manager Community Services in association with the Chair of the Wanaka Community Board. And the final change is in the last section of that other of the lease conditions. And it follows on from the comment about 1 sandwich board and the design wrap of the tow vehicle. The new text is, as a baseline, the trailer shall be coloured a recessive colour in the range of browns, greys and greens. However, any signage, imagery, corporate branding or design wraps to encompass all or part of the trailer may be allowed, but only if first confirmed as appropriate by the General Manager Community Services in discussion with the Chair of the Wanaka Community Board. Only signage and imagery so approved may be allowed within the licence area. And they are all the changes that are suggested, and you'll note that there is that option there for the Community Board about whether a booking office will or will not be accommodated within the facility.
Thank you, Jane. Has anyone got questions or something to add further to that?
Yeah, well, I'll happily kick this off. I would like to thank all the members of the Community Board for their input to the to this discussion. I'd also like to thank the staff for what's been a very long and I'm sure a fairly hard road to get to this point. This is you're dealing with someone's livelihood in a business here, and I think we always need to almost forget that when we're talking about bits of paper in front of us and license conditions. And these are a good young couple who have been trying to facilitate this operation, which 99% of the time is mum, dad and the kids having a great time on the lakefront. I got here in '89 and it was a fibre-light shack. It was supposedly iconic. It morphed into a log cabin, which is supposedly iconic. It's now morphing into a trailer, which will come and go and hopefully continue to provide a bit of a service to the lakefront users. I think where we've landed is pretty good. I note that in the report that we have a lot of the Community Board has a lot of say over the final outcome of what happens here. There's a lot of say over the design of the trailer. There's a lot of say over the colours of the trailer. There's even a clause that allows the trailer to be removed permanently if and when we get to the final upgrade of the lakefront development plan. And I think that's, again, for me, is part of the end game. If we can get accommodate the vibrant businesses which don't impact on the lake and don't impact on people, then it'll be a good thing for the town. I go down and chuck myself off that wharf on a regular basis. I interact with all the vehicles that are coming and going in that wharf, as do most of the school kids in the town. It's a great spot. It's one of my favourite spots on the planet, never mind Justin. And I don't think Lakeland Adventures detract from that. The discussion, the recommendation, one point I'd like to note is in the recommendation is that when it says that the alternate recommendation is that the trailer will not accommodate a booking office facility. I actually think that that's potentially doesn't need to be in there. If you're saying it will accommodate, well, that means it has to be in there now. It could be just the trailer that's transporting equipment. If you say it will not accommodate, well, where are they going to book tickets from? So even at the point where it says, at the end, it defines the trailer as being 9 meters long, just stick a full stop in there, would be my view. I'm happy to open it up to a general discussion in the board, but I think we need to move on and give these people some firmness, some solidity about moving their business forward. Happy to listen to anyone else has to say.
I can jump in next, if that's okay. Obviously, between the community board, this has been intensely discussed over the last not only few days, but weeks. This is just a point of clarification for anyone who might actually watch this later. But according to the report and discussions, our input today is absolutely limited to what happens on the reserve. That's correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the activity on the lake is dictated by a separate resource consent, RN 200-245, and we have no input into that at all.
That's correct. I will note that the determination on whether or not that consent will be publicly notified has not yet been made. Okay, but there's no guarantee that that will be publicly notified. Because one of my big concerns is the scope and scale of activity which Lakeland Adventures is proposing, which I feel is significantly more than what actually currently happens. So as far as that activity goes, the Wanaka Community Board will have no further input. So what we're being asked today is to grant a license to the activity described in the separate resource consent, or not grant a license at all. Yes, the sale of those activities will occur from the reserve land as proposed. Okay. Yeah, all along with this, I've been deeply uncomfortable with why we as a council can't say we are supportive of operating your business from a reserve with these terms and conditions. And if these terms and conditions don't make it a viable option, then you probably need to look at alternatives. So I am supportive of granting a license, but I don't believe that the scope and scale of the activity on the lake is appropriate for Roy's Bay. I have had feedback from the community which indicates that there is some degree of concern over the guided tours of jet skis in terms of the safety factor. Not only physical safety, but just the
the extra numbers of people being proposed to put on the lake, and also the enjoyment of people on the reserve. And I would support a license for the business with the hire of non-powered vehicles, but when it comes to the scale of the additional activity, I am reluctant.
Can I just point out that in conversation with the Office of the Harbour Master, there were no recorded incidents in the last, I think it was 12 to 18 months of that sort of time scale that involved the hire of jet skis, and all the incidents that were reported were private jet skis operating in and on the lake, for which we have no control whatsoever, apart from maritime regulation.
That's a point well made, but like I say, what Lakeland Adventures is proposing, or what the license actually permits, or sorry, what the resource consent, the separate resource consent permits in terms of the volumes of tours and number of people is greater. So that's my comment on that one.
Okay, has anyone else got something to add?
I'd like to endorse Calum's points. I think we should take out that reference to whether the booking office will or will not be included. I think including the booking office is actually a smart solution, and will actually enhance the look of this. I'm comfortable that there's enough in regards to the signage. It has to comply with the district plan, so I think we've covered that off. So, and I do think we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to be seen to be encouraging businesses in this town, and I know that's not, but they have to comply obviously with the rules and regulations. But I don't think we need to be putting too tough at times. I mean, I have had feedback from people who, other people, obviously not the same people that Neve's been talking to, but who support this sort of activity. So we can always find people who support and divide and be for and against. We've just got to make the decision in the end. And I think, especially in these times as we rebuild Wanaka, and what that will look like in 5 years' time, who knows? But I think having a vibrant lakefront is important, and if we end up with no activities on the lakefront and it's just this big vast area and no one there, it's not going to look very attractive. So in terms of one of the beauties of Wanaka has been the vibrancy without being a Queenstown level of vibrancy, but we do need things happening in our town. And a great example of that is the ski season. Without the ski season, without skiing in Wanaka, winter would look very different in our town. So we need to be doing all we can to help these businesses. And I take Neve's point that if they're not allowed to have jet skis, and if they can't get a resource consent for that, and they say that faults their business, well, that's their decision then. But I think we should just be granting them this beach permit.
Anyone else? Thanks, Quentin.
Yeah, thank you. I've just got a couple of questions to start with. Firstly, can you confirm whether their jetty structures have a license or permit, their temporary jetty structures?
There is a permit included in their resource consent application as an attachment, yes.
Right, so they don't currently, but they're seeking one. Is that what you're saying?
No, they do have those permits, as I understand.
Right, okay. And can you confirm whether they hold a permit or consent to use council structures for a commercial activity?
I'm unsure of that, but I can confirm that.
Okay, so that relates to the jetty primarily. And the other one I have a question for, and this relates to, I suppose, the scope of what we're being asked to do today. we aren't being asked to give affected party approval or landowners' consent for relating to the resource consent application. Do you see the approval of this license as with the scope of the activities that are described in this report? Do you see that as an implicit affected party approval for the activity being sought?
If the licence is recommended for approval today, the Parks Department will confirm with the processing officer that landowner approval with conditions has been given for the use of the reserve. Affected party approval is not being sought from the Parks Department, nor is it being sought from the Community Board for the wider application. However, Parks comment will be provided to the wider application, but it's not affected party approval in that sense.
Okay.
If the license isn't recommended for approval today, then we will be withholding landowner approval for the use of the reserve from the resource consent.
Okay. All right. So here's where I'm at, is that, you know, I understand the history and the lease and the activities that Lakeland Adventures have traditionally undertaken. I support the idea of them moving from what has been operated from a lease at the log cabin to a license, a beach license for appropriate activities. What I'm not comfortable with is the conditions and the activities for which they are, that we're issuing a license. So in that respect, and I won't go into that in detail, because I mean, apart from to say that, you know, the signage, you know, certainly the scale of the signage around the trailer is significant, and I would suggest up to 20 times greater than what is permitted by other licenses on beach licenses, and that it does really represent billboarding on council reserves, and I have concerns about that. And I do think that, and I do have concerns about the scale of the activity. Now, as I said, I'm not opposed to reasonable conditions imposed on a license that represents a true beach activity and a beach license. So from that perspective, I read the report and the options, and, you know, the option 2 seems to be the one that makes sense in that regard, is that to grant a license, but subject to different terms and conditions. And that's sort of where I'm at. But I don't think it's worth trying to litigate what those conditions will be in this context. And that's my challenge here. And I'm not comfortable with the idea that approval of the license will enable, and I accept your answer, but I think it sort of implies approval for the activity, and I'm not comfortable with that.
I support what Quentin's saying, and I won't be supporting any motion, because I'm most uncomfortable about what is referred to as a trailer. I appreciate that it's on wheels and therefore that is its classification, but basically to me it's a 9-metre building, and I'm not comfortable about that. I think a number of people in the community would not be comfortable with that, and for those ones I represent, that will be why I will not be supporting it, along with the uncertainty that's referred to by Quentin and Neve. Thank you.
Thanks, Jude. Has anyone else got something to add?
Can I ask just a point of clarification with regard to the signage and the trailer and billboarding? I was under the impression that we'd got to the end point whereby any signage that was on the trailer would be granted in the context of relating to the district plan. Is that correct, Aaron?
I'm not too sure. They're applying for resource consent to go beyond the permitted level of signage in the resource consent, in the district plan. And if they do get resource consent, then technically speaking, they do actually have signage which complies with the district plan and that they have consent. So I'm just not too sure if we were going to set a specific limit under that condition. It's still left reasonably open.
I'm with you. So in terms of the application for a resource consent, that's a separate process to this?
Yeah, it is. And they have applied for consent for signage that goes beyond the permitted baseline level of signage that the district plan allows.
And is there any further input by the community board, council, or is it left up to officers?
It would, well, it depends if the consent is publicly notified. If it's publicly notified, then anyone could submit on the extent of signage and a commissioner decision would decide what the signage level is appropriate. Ultimately, under the license, the board can essentially say the limit of signage that they're comfortable with and the nature of that signage. That's why the condition says that the trailer as its basis just must be a plain colour, but that any signage beyond that colour has to first be endorsed by the board. And if they come to the board with a 2 metre sign and you say, we don't like that, or if they come with a 3 metre sign and the board say, actually, we quite like that, then they could have that signage and the district plan resource consent would cover that. It is a bit complex with 2 processes running, and it is very difficult for applicants to manage with certainty with 2 different processes.
I can see that, but what you're saying, if I can hear it, is that the guidance we're giving here is that the applicant then comes back to the community board with a scale, and that scale then has to be approved by the community board. Is that correct?
That is correct. But their resource consent, which actually has to run concurrently, they'll have to probably ask for the maximum amount of signage under that consent so that they at least have scope for the board to make a decision under that.
And can I then refer that to Councillor Smith and say, does that give you any comfort with regard to the signage and billboarding issue you mentioned?
Well, I think the interaction of these 2 processes is the things that I'm concerned about, because what you're saying is what Aaron's saying is if they get resource consent, then they comply, and the other way around, if we don't define that they could get a resource consent for more than what the board, I think the license should actually specify what the expectation is, and it has done in the case of other licenses on the Wanaka lakefront. Around what the signage is, and I do think there should be some consistency around how they're treated for fairness of the operators, and so I do think it should specify, and I don't think leaving it, put it this way, there's a big difference between 2 square metres the district planner allows and the 40-something square metres that are proposed under the current indications.
So without wanting to legislate on the hoof, is there a maximum or an indication that you would be comfortable with?
Well, I mean, I think that basically telling them that they're limited to what the district plan provides for, which I believe is 2 square metres of signage, with the caveat that other signage might be permissible with written approval of council, which is exactly how the other consents are dealt with.
Can I just say that as far as signage and the trailer goes, I think that there is a fair likelihood that on this particular matter we could come to a consensus. I think one of the complicating factors is that we're talking about a trailer which is it is technically a trailer, but it is kind of also a structure that's going to be sitting there for, during daylight hours for a certain period of the month. But I think there is scope within what is being proposed that, it comes back to the community board and we can come I would feel fairly confident that the board would come to some sort of agreement on the signage. Similarly, with the length of the proposed license being 5+1, I feel that it captures better the temporary nature of this, and would be relatively comfortable with that. Of course, unfortunately, and what Quentin has pointed out is that, first of all, with other operators along the lakefront, I'm concerned that there's a discrepancy with what we are allowing with this license. So as far as fairness is concerned, and again, going back to the scale of activity that is being proposed under this license, we are talking about a beach reserve here. It is used widely by our residents. It's used widely by other visitors that may not have any interest in hiring out motorised equipment. And, you know, I feel that it's council's responsibility to prioritise the enjoyment and considerations of the wider community in this. I am supportive of businesses. I'm supportive of granting a licence, just not on the scale of what has been proposed, which I understand is outside the remit of this discussion.
Okay, guys, we've sort of thrashed this one out pretty well.
Sorry, Barry, I've got some comment with regard to Quentin's questions around the jetties, if that's helpful for me to. Yes, please. Briefly. Yep. So Quentin, sorry, I'm just quickly looking through the AEE for the resource consent. Lakeland has been getting annual permits for the Lakeland Adventure 2 jetties and their moorings, but resource consent is being sought for the commercial use of these, and they are also proposing to use the commercial jetty in the marina in jetty 147. I'm unsure if those are the same thing or two separate jetties, but so that is covered off under the resource consent at the moment.
Thanks, Jude.
Thanks for that feedback.
Right, I think we're at the stage we need to make a move on this. Given that there has been amendments made to the report, and there will be further consultation with the community board, is somebody prepared to move that we grant the licence to Lakeland Adventures, subject to the different terms and conditions as determined by QLDC and approved by the Wanaka Community Board?
Hey Barry, Stu here, I just want to check where we are procedurally with Jane. I'm not sure that she's actually online at the moment. Jane, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I was trying to email you back. I've just turned off my camera because where I sit in the morning, I can't avoid the sunshine coming in behind me. So I am happy to put it on, but you will just get quite a lot of backlit me, depending on the level of sunshine.
So my question is, we've got an amended recommendation. Does that need to be moved before we can
yes.
take a position?
Yeah, there is nothing on the table at present. A proposed change has been put forward, noting, however, that it did have an option within that. So it does need, at this point, for there to be a mover and a seconder of something for the meeting to move forward.
Also, sorry, Jane, can I confirm, has a decision been made on the booking office, that option within that changed recommendation? I have judged by the discussion that the preference would be to actually omit that from the text, but I would need the members of the board to confirm that.
Yeah, if I can step in there, I'd be with where it says under the other section, the main trailer will be a maximum of 9 meters long, full stop. and then it has the option of will not accommodate a booking office facility. I would suggest potentially if we could just strike that, so the main trailer will be 9 meters long, and then the rest of the wording. Then I would be happy to move that as a recommendation with the alternative wording.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. Now, the councillors will be aware that whilst we are doing these Zoom meetings, we conduct every resolution as if it was a division. So that means that everybody is asked to verbalise their response as aye or no. And I will read the names out. Now, for each resolution that you make today, the names will be read in a different order. So I have Councillor MacLeod as the mover and Ed Taylor as the seconder.
Sorry,
So,
could we please repeat the motion specifically? Oh, not the whole thing. We're talking about the amendments that were proposed earlier by Jeannie and were read out at the start of the meeting. Is that right?
okay, yes, so it is as printed in the agenda, but within part 2 of the recommendation, there are several changes under the terms of the licence. So the first is in renewals. So it is now 5 of a further 1 year by agreement of both parties. Under use, we are clarifying that the commercial water-based activities upon Lake Wanaka are by Lakeland Adventures. Then there are several changes under the other section. The first is on retail activities shall be limited to equipment hire and the sale of Lakeland Adventures Limited tickets, and that is all, so any other remaining text has been removed. The next change is directly underneath. The main trailer will be a maximum of 9 metres long. The final design of the trailer must first be confirmed as appropriate by the General Manager Community Services in discussion with the Chair of the Wanaka Community Board. And the final change is in the final other under the conditions of the licence, and it's to do with the on-site signage. It reads, as a baseline, the trailer shall be coloured a recessive colour in the range of browns, greys and greens. However, any signage, imagery, corporate branding or design wraps to encompass all or part of the trailer may be allowed, but only if first confirmed as appropriate by the General Manager Community Services in discussion with the Chair of the Wanaka Community Board. Only signage and imagery so approved may be allowed within the licence area. That is the motion as put with Councillor MacLeod as the mover and Ed Taylor as the seconder.
And just,
Thank you, Jane.
Just under the sort of right of comment at this stage, I just want to say that once again, that I support the idea of issuing a licence. I'm just not comfortable with the terms and the activities for which it provides at this stage.
Yeah, I'd like to concur with that.
Okay, so I'll continue taking the vote. So I'll start with Barry.
Aye.
Jude.
Against.
Chris.
Aye.
Calum.
Aye.
I assume you are the mover. Neve.
No.
Quentin.
Against.
Ed.
In favour.
Okay, the motion is carried 4-3.
Thank you, Jane.
So that moves it. That's to approve the amended motion. Now you vote on the substantial, don't you?
No, that was the motion that was the original motion as moved by Calum. There was an alternative that he, via me, presented on the table. So no, it's fine. There is no further resolution required.
Okay, I'll take your advice on that.
Thank you, Jane and Stuart. Right, we can now move on to item 2 on our agenda, and that's the proposal to vest land in Wanaka associated with the North Lake development. And I'll hand over to Aaron, the author of the report, to address us on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a request for, I think it's a stormwater reserve and 2 connection reserves. The essential purpose of connection reserves really is to put in infrastructure, and at the same time it makes sense to have a connection as part of that. Because they need to be covered by a reserve, it requires the endorsement of the community board. I have nothing further to add to the report. It is as it is.
Has anyone got any questions to Aaron? Quentin.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. And Barry. Yeah, just a question. You know, I recall that probably in 2016 or something, there was a holistic reserves plan that was approved by the board for North Lake developments that sort of took all the proposed reserves and said basically that if you were in accordance with this plan, then you could vest the reserves as under delegation. Now, clearly there's been some issues around the outline development plans and the master plans for North Lake. I'm just wondering if you can confirm how you've assessed whether these access reserves and the context of the other reserves fit in the overall scheme of things.
I'm not too sure how to answer that, but there was a bundle of reserves taken to the board in 2016 by another council officer, and that was because at that stage North Lake were dealing with a number of known stages of development and a known subdivision layout, and those reserves were identified and they were taken forward and sought as a whole. This stage of the development is not part of that. It is different, and they're applying for it as one stage. The stormwater is where they've identified stormwater as being necessary. I can't really comment on that, but I have to get a council permission for it to vest as reserves. And the connection / infrastructure reserves, I'm not assessing beyond. I'm just taking this forward to seek permission for those to vest as reserves. The design of the urban design matters would be something considered by the processing planners under the consent in the subdivision, and the feasibility of connection, but I'm just taking the permission for these to actually vest as reserves, if that answers the question.
And I understand that, and obviously previously I've made the point that we need to be more strategic around how our reserves connect and interrelate with each other and what we're providing for. So as I said, I'm not opposed to these reserves. I just don't understand how we can determine whether an access reserve is acceptable unless we understand how it interrelates with the adjoining access, the public, the active transport linkages and the local connections and we need to take a holistic planning approach to large developments like this. And I won't push that further, just other than to say, what's the stormwater? It's obviously relatively big, over an acre. What's it going to look like? Is it going to be a mud pit, or is it going to be a playable landscaped area?
We've identified there won't be any reserve credits for that stormwater area. It would be, I assume, grassed. I doubt it would.
You assume, or you require it to be grassed?
With stormwater, it depends if it's going to be detention. I'm not the infrastructure engineer that's assessing the nature of that stormwater function, and it is there to provide a stormwater function. I'm just bringing forward the vesting of that land as a local purpose stormwater reserve to provide for that stormwater function.
Okay, does condition C III relate? They have to submit a landscape plan and to the local purpose reserve as well?
I think, does that, sorry, I just have to open that up. That's a very standard condition, and that applies to the connection, the reserves that could be used as connection as well. It's just so we have certainty that what goes in there is actually something we can maintain.
And that's what I'm asking.
I.e., if it's...
is the local purpose stormwater reserve also subject to submitting a landscape plan to prove that it's accessible and manageable for the reserves department?
Yes, we would look at that more from a maintenance perspective. We don't want to be going in there and having to try to mow or maintain areas which are inaccessible, create a maintenance burden and a cost for council. We want to make sure that it is something. And the other thing is, if they're planting trees, we want to make sure those trees are actually going to survive and that residents aren't going to complain that the trees are dead. So we want to have that level of say to make sure it is actually going to be functional and not.
And just one final question is, can I have confidence that the stormwater reserve, that there's sufficient protection there, that the stormwater reserve isn't going to be a giant mud pit and is going to be sufficiently landscaped that the amenity and the maintenance of it is appropriate in the urban context?
Sorry, someone's calling me then and my headset cut out. Sorry, what was the first part of what you said?
I just said, can I have confidence that the condition requiring the landscaping plan approval and that will ensure that the local purpose reserve for stormwater isn't just a giant mud pit, and that it will be an area that has reasonable amenity and is accessible to the public and maintainable by the council?
I don't know how accessible will be to the public, but it would be very similar to a myriad of other stormwater type reserves within urban areas.
Well, that's what I'm asking, is that that there are some that are reasonable condition, and some that are in a relatively poor, inaccessible state, and there's a big difference, because this is a highly developed urban area, and we need to be satisfied that the result is suitable.
Yeah, in that case, I think you could rely on the requirement for a landscape condition, and that we don't usually approve mud pits in residential areas. We prefer them to be grassed, to have some trees, to be at least attractive. The usability question, if they are going to be holding water, then people aren't going to be able to go in there, but their purpose is actually for stormwater.
Okay, I'll leave it there, but I do think we need to take a far more strategic approach to reserve vesting, and I've said it over and over and over and over again, and I don't know how many different ways I can say it, that we shouldn't just be accepting whatever we're given. We need to take a strategic view around how they connect to each other and what is required by the local community.
And can I jump in there? Because I fully agree with what you're saying, Quentin, and I do feel, Aaron, you're a bit of the meat in the sandwich here. I apologise, but I recognise that particular stormwater reserve, and what I'd suggest in terms of usability, and soon as if you could get a couple of 100,000 out your back pocket, we could concrete this stormwater reserve. It would still function beautifully as a stormwater reserve, and it could become a skate park for the kids in Northlick. But I would like, on a serious note, I would like to echo Quentin's comments in that we need to, there's too many reserves over too many years have just been given away because developers have that little bit of land that is unusable or too steep, and what it does is it ends up becoming a burden on ratepayers in terms of maintenance. I actually would love to see this particular area concreted and turned into a skate park. I think that would be a great outcome. But endorse your comments, Quentin, but feel for you, Aaron. And if Thunas could, spend up large, that'd be great.
Yeah, I do too. Thanks for that, Quentin. And Aaron, I saw your face when you were having to get through that. Hey, Quentin, just a question, because whereabouts is there, can you give us an example of one that you were referring to that isn't up to scratch, isn't maintained?
Look, I think the Alpha Series one's one that's highly problematic at the moment, and that there's a local purpose reserve that is in a poor state and also not functioning very well as a stormwater thing. So, I mean, that's one example. I'm aware of
there's a whole list of people, like there's one off Mount Iron Drive going up to your place, Quentin. It's used for a truck to park on. It's just a little section that had connectivity and doesn't. There's tons of them all over the place.
And also aware that the most recently in Hikawai Reserve that they've got 2 fairly large detention basins, which, to be fair, are fenced off and managed appropriately with a path around them. But my point is that we need to understand what those outcomes look like. Admittedly, even in North Lake itself, there are examples of stormwater basins that actually at the moment look pretty good. So the one down near the Monkey Farm Cafe, is actually looking in a reasonable state at the moment. So I accept that too.
There's a big one next to Placemakers as well that is reasonably unsightly in terms of a stormwater detention pond.
Yeah, very good example.
So yeah, I guess the thing that I've noticed, even with the one that I'm familiar with at Hawea, where there wasn't irrigation put in, so the trees died. So it's just ensuring if there are trees that are going to be irrigated. And when we agree to something like this, because it makes such, it seems when you read it on paper that it'll all look as good as it needs to, but it's getting those things clarified. But that reserve I'm talking about, or that stormwater reserve, was some time ago, and I think I know that council have improved with ensuring that trees don't die, because we have Diana.
I would like just to add that I agree about they've got to be fit for purpose, and because the ongoing cost of maintaining these falls on all ratepayers, and if they're not areas that all ratepayers can actually use other than just being a bit of grass, it's going to cost over the lifetime of those reserves hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to maintain, and they've got to be worth having, I believe. Otherwise, they might as well just have bigger sections.
Mr. Chair,
I'm happy to bring this to a head if we like. I mean,
I'm happy to move it.
I do think, and this is to go to Thurnis and Aaron, is that we do need to, the cross-departmental stuff is really important. You need to be speaking to the planning and development department early and not coming to us with piecemeal stuff, and I maintain that. Happy to move. Jude's moved, happy to second.
Also, I think that in assisting that, potentially having one council office as opposed to 7 would be a great step in the right direction. So if councillors want to support that, that'd be great.
Okay, we have Jude's moved, Quentin seconded. I'll hand over to you, Jane.
Okay, Chris.
Aye.
Calum.
That's an aye from me. And if you wouldn't mind, I think Thurnis was going to try and say something. So at the end of this, I'd like to hear from him if he could.
Okay,
oh, he's on the phone, too late.
Neve.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
And Barry.
Yes.
Okay, so with Jude moving, I assume she is in favour, and Quentin seconding, I assume is in favour. So the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, Jane. Right, we move on to item 3 on the agenda. That's the additional on-road and off-road restrictions for traffic and parking bylaw 28 in North Lake, Alpha Ridge, The Heights, and 3 parks. Tricia was the report author. Is there somebody going? Carrie, are you going to speak to this report?
Trisha's going to start off with us.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Trisha, we'll let you step in.
Yep. Good morning. We've submitted a report for additional on and off road parking restrictions under the traffic and parking bylaw. This has been distributed to the board. You'll have that already. This is to consider restrictions for parking off a roadway and no large passenger vehicles in North Lake, Alpha Ridge, The Heights and Three Park subdivisions. It also allows for signage to enable enforcement. The reasons for these restrictions are to ensure any parking issues are managed efficiently, potential damage to council infrastructure, protect the above ground infrastructure such as cultivated grass, to address safety concerns due to compromised sightlines and high volumes of vulnerable road users in those subdivisions. It remains consistent with other new subdivisions in the district, and it's to ensure, and by erecting the signage early, it avoids disruption to the community, as we're seeing prior in Lake Hayes and Shadow Country. And just hoping that you'll accept that report as it is. Thank you.
Quentin.
Very, very quick one. We considered these in the Wakatipu as part of the parking and traffic subcommittee, and I have no problem with, other than to say that I do think it would be slightly unreasonable not to allow passenger vehicles into Three Park subdivision, given there is a school and a sports centre there. So I would delete that from the first provision.
So this would allow them to go in there. It's just that they wouldn't be allowed to park in there for long periods of time.
On council land?
Correct.
Yep, okay, so if they can park on road reserve, but if they can park in the sports centre and they can park at the school, then we're probably fine. Yep.
Yep.
I guess the point is, if there was a, if they were putting on a play and a whole lot of other schools came to visit and came by bus, Quentin's point might be that there's not enough parking for half a dozen buses in their car park, plus normal cars of staff and stuff. So if they spilled out onto the road just for that performance, is that going to be an issue? Or is it a time thing?
What would normally happen, I would hope, in those situations, people would contact us, and this is really meant more for those long-term parking overnight in the areas where you don't really want a bus outside your house. So we certainly look at any complaint on an individual basis, and we would assess that situation. So certainly for a function that's being held, we would certainly want to discuss that and see what the implications were, and in those areas we would be more than happy for that to happen.
Happy to move.
Happy to move. Do we have a seconder? Chris? Hand over to you, Jane.
Jude. Yeah. Jude, what is your vote?
Sorry, didn't have my mute button on. I support.
Okay, Neve?
Support.
Quentin?
I moved.
Okay, I actually did get a different mover.
That's fine, I'm support.
Okay, and Ed?
I can support.
Okay, so with that, I noticed that Barry was the mover, so I assume he supports, and Chris was the seconder. So that motion is carried unanimously.
I support, by the way.
Oh, my apologies. Yes, sorry.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
How can
Crack
we
on,
forget
Jim.
you?
Thanks, Calum.
Not a problem, but crack on.
Right, we go to item 4, which is the additional parking restrictions under the Traffic and Parking Bylaw 2018. And Andrew Edgar is the report author. Is Andrew available? Yes,
Yes,
Andrew's
I
here.
am.
All yours, Andrew.
Nice beard, Andrew.
Thank you. I've been working on it for a few weeks.
That's impressive. It's like What's his name? Wolverine.
Yeah, I was thinking of going for the Old Man of the Sea look, but yeah, it's turning a little better now. Badger, yeah. Yes, so this is a report that's actually been in the making for quite a while now. It was to go to the Infrastructure Committee last year before the election. It was then delayed until after the election, and then the rules were changed and the Wanaka components were to be brought to this meeting. So these are the Wanaka components that were split out of the infrastructure report that was written earlier this year. Yeah, and apart from that, I will take it as read and happy to take any questions.
I'll just add that once again, the Wakatipu equivalents of these were run through the Parking and Traffic Subcommittee, and Hanley Park and Shot Over Country, particularly around access to emergency services and particularly fire trucks. And although we, I suppose anticipated some kickback, I've also actually received some relatively positive feedback from new residents of those areas that find it far easier to get through the roads with only parking on one side. So, that there are certainly roads in Northlake where if you have a car parked legally on both sides of the road, you couldn't fit a car down the middle, and that is essentially, and certainly not a fire truck or a garbage truck. So that is essentially the problem that component's trying to resolve, as well as all other lots of tidy up.
I'd just like to ask, because I know that we've had representations before, specifically from business owners in Cliff Wilson Street, about time restrictions on parking. There's nothing in here that would stop us bringing that in at some stage, or was that considered?
That's point 4 in the executive summary about looking at time for parking restrictions on Cliff Wilson, Reeds Crescent, and that whole Anderson Heights area. And
so when's that going to be addressed?
So we're currently asking to go out to consultation. And then we'll determine what sort of time restrictions are appropriate for the area. It may be different for different locations. We may do the same time restriction over the whole area.
Great, fantastic, crack on.
Cool.
And love the use of crack on, Ed, well done. Also, Andrew, how you doing, mate?
Good.
Good. Just with regard to the consultation you're about to undertake with the Anderson Road business mixed-use area, the what is termed the Mitre 10 car park, of course that's council owned. I was just wondering if we're going to be asking or polling the people up there whether that could be used as an all-day car park. I noticed the time restrictions went up to about 4 hours, but I know that there's a lot of businesses and a lot of people in that area that use that for their staff to work, and I don't know if that's terribly appropriate, but it's certainly a good use of the car park. And noting that Mitre 10 will be moving to 3 parks in the next 12 months, that could be a good fallback. So I'm just wondering if we've included that in the consultation process, the all-day component.
Yes, yeah, and that will definitely be included in it. I guess we need to look at what, if any, agreement there is for any part of that car park to be associated with the land that the Mitre 10's on, so any future occupant may be expecting to use that land as well, or that car park as well.
I think it's a great opportunity with Mitre 10 leaving to change that, to make sure that we make it clear what that use of that car park is, because it also came up in discussions when we were discussing the proposed active transport cycleway down Anderson Road, and having discussions with the business owners there saying that their staff can park all day because it's being used, that other side of Anderson Road's been used by people who park there all day to work. And we've said that, about 3 minutes walk away is a council car park where they can park all day. So currently, so I think that's, Calum's right, that's probably something we've got to think through quite carefully. Does that become like the, that becomes the workers' car park for that area?
And even to, moving on from that, you could, in a future-proof world, look at end-of-use cycle facilities. So you've got some cage storage for bikes and maybe even a shower to change, that sort of stuff. It would be a great use. And also, with your point, Andrew, the new user of the Mitre 10 building, I'm assuming because there's a potential that whoever's using that would then end up having to comply with council regulations or rules in terms of timing. And if there was any car parking component provided by us, that would be, there'd be a potential cost attached to that.
Yeah, it depends on what the agreement is. We'll have to go back through the past planning.
It's good to see that bit of work being investigated. You know, clearly there needs to be a range of opportunities, both from loading bays through to all-day parking, and that's what we expect, I suppose, to be looked at in that Anderson Heights review. So I'm sure you'll be on top of that. I'm happy to move, but I think Jude had a comment.
Yeah, and I agree. It's great that it can be there. I just find myself thinking right now, while we've got the outfall of COVID-19, and it's so hard to imagine a lot of cars and vehicles like we've had in the past, but we just have to be a bit mindful with areas like that, that what could pop up. For example, ski workers parking there and the bus picking them up there, and then there not being enough parking for the people who want to work close by, or people wanting to go to weddings and they all park their cars in there and the bus picks them up. Just fine on a Saturday, but yeah, there's all sorts of possibilities, aren't there, of what can happen with all-day car park, as we found out with the Brownston Street Dungarvan car park.
Yeah, I'd just add that that in terms of that area, it is very much used by locals currently, with Mitre 10 being a huge draw card. And once Mitre 10 leaves, I think we'll have a much better idea, depending on what is replaced in the Mitre 10 building, on the demands up there. And I think the use of that area will probably change quite a lot over the next 5 to 10 years with 3 parks kicking in.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Calum. Jane, I'll hand over to you.
Sorry, can I just clarify who was the mover? I think it was Quentin.
Yeah, I think I did, yep.
So mover and seconder was...
That'll be Calum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Barry.
Aye.
Jude.
Support.
Ed.
Yep, all go.
Neve.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes, crack on.
Okay, and I had mover and seconder Quentin and Calum, so I assume they are both in support, so it is carried unanimously.
Thank you for that, the distinguished Mr. Edgar.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, right. We have now got item 5 on the agenda, which is a new licence to place tables and chairs in a public space at the Catch, Wanaka, and at the Dobin Bakery. Obviously, we have a report on that from Blake, so we'll hand over to Blake.
Thanks, and good morning, everyone. So, yeah, 2 points to make. First of all, roughly 3 years ago, almost 3 years to the day, in fact, WCB considered a very similar proposal from a establishment called Boa Boa. They've since moved on. Very similar proposal in that they wanted chairs closer to the curb than what Dobian has at the moment. The view of the WCB at the time was that the chairs would reduce the footpath width too much, and they gave feedback to the applicant to maybe revise their proposal to provide table leaners. they didn't proceed with that or come back, and they've since moved on. So we don't know really the reason for that, why they didn't re-propose that, or if they thought it was viable or not. But anyway, they've moved on. So we've since received another application from the current occupants looking for tables and chairs, and the resulting footpath width would be 2 metres. The second point I'd like to make is that, and I think you'd probably all be aware that we're currently reviewing the table and chair policy at the moment, and certainly accessibility has come up, and it's certainly under discussion at the moment what an appropriate footpath width would be. Certain areas where the main streets or pedestrianised areas may get different treatment, but it's certainly something being considered. But other than that, we're happy for the report to be accepted as read.
Quentin.
Thank you. I seem to be busy today, but that's all right. Yeah, I just want to touch base on, firstly, that the Boa application. I just want to, the board's decision at the time, so that the application was for 2.7 metres wide, and even that wasn't, in that location, wasn't quite seen as enough by the board, and they asked it to go back to the alignment of the bins and the light posts, and which is just roughly just over 3 metres. Also done a bit of exploring around what other councils require for in terms of minimums, and Napier was one. I think they had a 2.6 metre minimum, and also aware of other interacting things like people coming in and out of doors, which effectively reduces the ability for traffic, for pedestrian traffic to flow. And I mean, clearly we've also had a huge change of attitude in terms of the importance of pedestrian friendly locations, and I see that as really important here, to right to the national level, and that there's new policies around foot friendly policy, and obviously transport policy as well. So I've signalled to the board that an alternate motion here, and I if the opportunity arises, I'd be happy to move that. But basically it would say that the placement, that it grant a licence opposite the premises of those premises, subject to a minimum 3 metre unobstructed pavement width being maintained and an amended design being approved by the board. And I also just note there that I am open-minded to reconfiguration of the seating around the tree in order, if in that little build-out area, if they wanted to optimise that. But I also was going to add an additional recommendation that council recommends council that the policy be amended, which is what Blake was referring to, that it's currently under review, and that we look at a minimum pavement width of 3 metres be required for new tables and chairs licences. So I hope that's helpful, and I'm happy for the discussion, and if there's agreement, I'm happy to move that alternate motion.
Calum, Quentin, sorry, just to confirm, because this is quite an unusual one. Like you said, it's got the light. So you're saying 3 metres from the actual physical building out to the edge of any table?
I think the importance is where the obstructions are, Ed. So I'm saying an unobstructed width of 3 metres.
Oh, that basically means they can't use it then.
No, they've got 4.8 metres, so there's 1.8 metres of various other land available between the curb and the building, and they can use that however they like. I'm asking for the 3 metres of the pavement to be retained.
Can I ask a question, please? Thank you very much for your informative photos, Quentin, but how, can I ask you verbally to update how that relates to
consideration here, and obviously we need to make a decision on the Dobin's request. It seems pretty clear to me that we need to review the tables and chairs public space policy, and I mean, facilitating the easy flow of pedestrians There are times it gets very congested, and there I would have said at 3 meters would be a minimum aspiration to strive for. With specific regards to the dough bin, and going back to what Quentin said about the seating around the tree, I'd be happy to have that revisited. But also there is a space right beside the dough bin, that little square with grass on it. I don't know who owns that, but there is potentially, you know, an area for people to congregate right there.
It's private land. No.
Okay, well, okay, fine. It just seems that people do congregate there rather, you know, whether it's private land or not, but okay, that's fine.
Certainly at New Year, we had 500 students congregating there in a rather raucous fashion. The one thing as well is that the consideration and moving along, I think you're right, Quentin, I'm happy to support. The one thing that does concern me is that the seat round the tree, that has a dual function of protecting the tree as well as providing seating. So it'd be a shame if we took the seat away and it had a negative impact on the roots of the tree. So just bear that in mind.
No question. Why I asked that that design be brought back for approval. Yeah.
And second point is that if you have a 3 meter wide clear path, let's not get into the discussion about e-bikes and skateboards and other people using that. But if it's all right and everyone's finished the conversation, I'm happy to second Quentin's alternative motion.
Yeah.
Can I just have confirmation of what your amendment was, Quentin? I'm just not sure what we're voting on.
Through the chair, I have received a copy of it, so
I'm happy to run through it if you like, because I think there is one valid amendment to that fourth recommendation that might be proposed as well. So
would you mind if I read it through and you could correct what is incorrect on what I'm reading?
No problem.
Okay, so it is so the first one is note the contents of the report as per the agenda. 2, grant a new licence to place tables and chairs in a public space to Warner New Zealand Investments LP trading as the Catch Wanaka and the Dobin Wanaka for the placement of furniture on Ardmore Street Road Reserve opposite to their premises, subject to a minimum 3 metre unobstructed pavement width being maintained and the amended design being approved by the Wanaka Community Board. 3, approve the surrender of the existing licence held by the Dobin Bakery dated 7th May 2015. Recommend to Council that the policy be amended to require a minimum pavement width of, sorry, I'll read that again. Recommend to Council that the policy be amended to require that a minimum pavement width of 3 metres shall be maintained.
And I'll just add 4 new tables and chairs licenses.
Can I just question, there was a note attached to part 2 of that about including possible reconfiguration of circle seat around team. I'm not sure what that actually meant. So
okay, I'm happy for that to go back as guidance. It doesn't need to be part of the resolution, but just to say that open-minded to them coming back with an alternate design around the tree that, as Calum said, protects the tree and doesn't obstruct the pavement and the crossing as well. So, but you know, that all becomes clear once they look at the design.
Right, so I've got that as a note.
Yeah, I'm happy to move that as an alternate motion, as a new motion.
Okay.
I'll second if you like.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so I'll go through the members. Ed.
Sorry, yes.
Neve.
Support.
Calum.
Crack on.
Jude.
Yep, support.
Barry.
Aye.
Okay, and I assume that the mover and seconder are in support, so it is, the motion is carried unanimously.
Very much appreciated for taking those comments on board, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Quentin.
Thanks for doing the work.
Yeah, nice work.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Blake. Okay, we move on to the item 6, to the Chair's report. No doubt you will have had read it. I guess the Valentine Road resealing thing, I think Ed's probably could just give us a wee update on that. Ed, you have been talking to the people putting the plans in place for that.
Yeah, as per that report, it's on target. I checked a few weeks ago for the Mount Barker Residents Association because I was concerned that COVID could interrupt it, but they are still planning on getting the wheelbarrows there in start of September, so it's great news.
Can I ask, Ed, are they putting an off-road cycle path on the either side of Valentine Road as part of the development of the road?
No, they're not.
Really? That's a surprise.
The COVID-19 emergency response, I appreciate, has consumed a lot of time from council staff. I think a lot of the staff have been involved with assisting with aid to people that have been in need, particularly our migrant workers in Queenstown. I think that they've done a pretty amazing job. There's been, I think, up to about 10,000 requests for assistance, and that's taken a lot to coordinate and handle. So certainly, I think we owe a vote of appreciation to the staff who have put all that effort in. I think it's extraordinary times, and I think people have risen to the occasion and put in extraordinary effort. So certainly want to register that appreciation. And of course, Wanaka Social Services have been heavily involved as well. So it's hopefully we are heading in the right direction, but I get the feeling that there's going to be some discomfort yet before we get through this. Board members asked for feedback on our minor improvement projects, and Andrew Strawn and Ben Greenwood have given us that update sheet. So I hope everyone's responding to that with their inputs. Certainly, it'd be good to get those minor improvement projects that we can underway. It's certainly important times, and I think it'd be good to get some momentum there. I did attend the NZTA stakeholder tour in Queenstown, and Jim Harland and the new NZTA CE Nicole Rosie spoke and outlined the $90 million infrastructure spend. It was useful to certainly see that there's going to be some opportunity to do some major works. I didn't notice a lot of money being apportioned to Wanaka, but we can live and hope.
I'd just like to point out, echo your words there, Barry, and also just to applaud our Chief Executive, Mike Teelan, who spoke superbly well, gave NZTA, I'd have to say, rather than both barrels, it was probably all 3 barrels, and left them in no doubt of exactly our frustrations with the pace of the way things are going. So I thought it was a great meeting. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, Calum. I did attend the Wanaka AMP show at the QLDC tent for a couple of stints on the Friday and Saturday, and I didn't get COVID, which was good. But it was good to have the interaction with people, just have people wander in and have a look around and have a bit of a chat. I think it's a good opportunity. It's good profile for the community board and for the council. And I think, those sort of opportunities just to be able to have an informal chat with people are pretty valuable. So certainly I'd like to see that continued next year. The Ely Point boat ramp jetty replacement was included in the Lakefront Development Plan as a shovel-ready project and was recently submitted to central government for possible funding. So we'll keep our fingers crossed there. Calum, can you elaborate any more on that at all? Have you got any information from council level?
No, crack on. It will. I mean, it's. I think it's one of those projects that just has to go ahead, and I'm sure Quentin would agree. He's been doing a power of work pushing it. We all have.
Yep.
Maybe Stu, are you able to give us an update, Stu, on the time frame for decisions from central government, or was there nothing there?
We were hoping
end of this month.
Yeah, we were hoping something may be announced today, but no, it's not going to happen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stu.
Do you think their budget announcements might have anything to do with that, Stu?
Yeah.
So just any feedback from community board members who have had contact with any of their groups that they liaise with?
Just before we get on to that, I'd just like to acknowledge Robin Steele, who's part of this call, but we haven't she might turn a camera on, but Robin is the new Upper Clutha liaison officer for council, and I certainly look forward to engaging with her as a community board and benefiting from her extensive experience in local government.
And I'd also like to echo that and to note that Robin has got a vast amount of experience in event and disaster and impact relief, and she turned up at precisely the right time, it would seem. And she's already been working extremely hard on our behalf.
I'm also having to deal with event disasters.
Yes, I would like to endorse Robin's assistance too. I've been firing quite a bit of stuff her way and really appreciate the support and backup I'm getting. So thanks very much, Robin.
You're very welcome on board.
Thanks for the communication so far, Robin. That's great. I'll just comment. Makarora community's done well through COVID, and Ruby Island are having a working bee with appropriate distancing coming up this weekend. And the community hub of obviously the team there have worked in to do whatever they can to make things go well for the users of the community hub. And just something to mention with the community association or Hawea, a new sign has been put up at Isthmus Peak, and unfortunately it's a route. If you don't go back to the community to check, sometimes you can have mistakes because it says the next toilet's 19 kilometres to Deep Bay, and Deep Bay is 2.7 kilometres. And that's just one of those things that, money has to be spent to redo signage. So it's always good to go back to the communities because the people who live there, as we know best. And that's all I've got to say about all my things I'm delegated to.
Thanks, Jude. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just, I unfortunately haven't had any contact with, I've had lots of contact with the Chamber and Wanaka Tourism, and they've been doing a power of good work in the, and I couldn't summarise it all here, but it's been a great effort on our behalf. I do go cast my mind, with Jude's comments about the sign, cast my mind back to the opening of the Lake Wanaka Centre by the Right Honourable Sylvia Cartwright, and she pulled the string the cloth fell off and we'd spelt her name wrong. So errors in signage are a lovely thing, much to the embarrassment of the lady who's the chair of the community board at the time. Anyway, now crack on. That's all.
I'm happy to just add a few comments. You know, on the transport stuff that was touched on before around NZTA, that I've, as my role of as chair of the transport, the infrastructure committee, I'm part of the regional transport committee and the transport governance group, which engage with NZTA and the regional partners. And so there is, you know, significant progress and discussions happening around those things. So, you know, that it's good to see that we're changing the strategic objectives for the regional transport committee, which will help in some ways the case of the Upper Clutha in the regional land transport plan. So fairly technical, but yeah, there's some useful things. Be engaging regularly with the Upper Clutha Tracks Trust. They had a committee meeting last night and continue to sort of look with them around the projects in the Upper Clutha and the most, and that they have an announcement coming relatively soon about a new track that has finally been signed up and agreed to, which is exciting to hear. So that'll come out in due course. You know, continuing to look with the Tracks Trust and the Active Transport for opportunities and funding to pursue the causes of, you know, the clear voice in our community. That's a key priority, including through the stimulus package opportunities. So yeah, that they're the main ones. Obviously, the Upper Clutha sports community have been impacted by COVID in terms of both their normal activities, but also planning for the sports expo that they have later in the year, and it's just unclear as to whether that will proceed or be pushed to a different time, or but I'll keep you up to date with that. It's obviously a big community event. Certainly look forward to the sports facilities opening up again from Saturday with the pool and the sports centre with restrictions, so that's great news. They're probably the main ones for now. Yeah, so happy to pass on.
Thanks, Quentin. Anyone else got a contribution? Nothing.
Is it appropriate that I just pop something in here?
That'd be very appropriate, Rob. Go ahead.
I had a email this morning with some posters made up about the Luma Festival. Obviously, we can't host it this year at Queen's Birthday weekend, so they're wanting to get neighbourhoods and shops and everybody involved by brightening up their own front door or mailbox or shop window, something like that. So I will circulate to you the posters that can be distributed as widely as possible via email and Facebook. It's a short lead into Queen's Birthday weekend, but they're hoping to get as many people involved as possible.
Just further to that, Sharon Matthias popped past last week and wanted to know how we go about putting nice pretty lights up the trees in Helworth Street, as in Christmas fairy lights.
Light up Wanaka, we could get that group going again, Chris.
Oh, we've still got our Christmas lights in the front window.
Not wanting to be the Grinch, but did someone say carbon footprint? Just wanted to acknowledge as well that some people are doing above and beyond the call to signal that we're getting back to level 2. And I do believe that this morning a very nervous looking Jim Bolt chucked himself off the Kawara Bridge to signal that tourism is open for business again. So it'd be good if everyone can spread the I love Wanaka.
Yeah, he did a great job. The timing was great. It was on national radio just prior to the 8 o'clock news, and we couldn't have got better exposure. So Well done, Jim, jumping off a bridge.
And I just recommend that everyone gets behind the I Love Wanaka and I Support Wanaka Businesses. That would be just sensational.
How much money do you think we could raise if we had to throw a politician off a bridge day?
You can go first, Quentin. We'll get called for bids.
I'm there. I'm all good.
I'd just
If we got Simon Bridges to volunteer, we could make a small fortune.
I think, you know, like we are all concerned about what's happened, and especially to our town, which is so reliant on tourism, be it domestic or international tourism. And, you know, I still think we have, you know, I'm the eternal optimist, but I am concerned about in 2 months' time, you know, in the depths of winter when it's cold and people are out of work, they've got nowhere to go. You know, so I think we're going to need to really keep focused on this in terms of supporting people in our community, because I think that's when people will really start hitting the wall. For a lot of people, it's been like a holiday, and Dad's been home playing with the kids for a month. So giving mum a bit of a break from the daily grind of raising the kids. So for some people, but in our community, there's going to be a lot of people because, you know, I don't believe that there's any business in our town that is immune to this.
Yeah, you're correct, Ed. I think we are in for a pretty quiet time, which will create some hardship. So it's pretty important to stick together and support our community.
It's particularly hard for people who are challenged anyway with even what might be considered minor mental health issues, even low forms of anxiety for some people are rising, but for the people who usually have quite extreme levels or midway levels of anxiety and low self-esteem and obsessive compulsive disorders, whatever they might be, for those people I know that those who have lost their jobs, they're doing it really hard now, and they kind of get lost in our community because they're so sad and lonely. I know of lots of people who are beside themselves and crying.
Thanks, Jude. Okay, guys, anyone else got something to round off with? Or I guess Jane.
Sorry, I just was going to say that you just probably want to have a mover and a seconder to note the report, and I would think that that was the nature of a procedural type of resolution, so you could probably just take verbal or visual assent or opposition.
Happy to move.
Second.
And
all those in favour?
Aye.
Yep.
And I'd just like to wish Stu Burns good luck with the long-term plan, the annual plan and the long-term plan calculations. I know he's doing a pile of work, and I'm sure we all wish him the best. He's doing a marvellous job keeping the numbers down, and long may that continue.
Yeah,
Thanks,
it's pretty.
Calum.
Thanks, Calum. Pretty challenging budget round this time.
We've got absolute trust in you, Stu.
I'll do my best.
Thanks.
No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure. Just remember the upper Clutha.
Thanks, guys. I guess it is appropriate now to call the meeting to an end, and we'll close the meeting as 12 p.m. midday.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Just want to signal that the next board meeting is on the 18th of June, and with any luck we will be in the Armstrong room for that one, albeit with some social distancing procedures in place.